Hi, this is Chris with Moore Family Funeral Homes. Today I'm coming to you from Memorial Park in Newtown in front of this beautiful Veterans Memorial. As you know, this weekend we celebrate Memorial Day, an important holiday in our country. It's a day where we celebrate and remember and memorialize those who were killed in action while serving our country and our nation's armed forces. This week I had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of gentlemen from the Southwest Ohio Memorial Team who are also veterans to talk to them a little bit about remembering our veterans and what Memorial Day means to them. Check out this interview.
My name is Kenneth Huber. I'm retired from the U.S. Navy. I'm the commander of the Southwest Ohio VFW Memorial Team.
I'm Larry. I'm the chaplain for the Southwest Ohio VFW Memorial Team, and I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam War.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about what the VFW Memorial Team does?
We render final military honors for honorably discharged veterans at their funerals. It consists of 2 speeches by the commander, 2 short speeches, 2 prayers by the chaplain, 3 rifle volley, sounding of taps, and the folding and presenting of the flag to the next of kin.
And tell us why you got involved in serving with the VFW Memorial Team.
I served with some friends of mine who were killed in Vietnam. They were KIA, and I also knew of quite a few fellows that I didn't know personally, but they were killed in my presence. And all these guys had one thing in common, with the exception of one. They were all younger than me, and I was 20 years old at the time. So I thought, I know that when Memorial Day comes around, their families will remember them every year. No one else will. Now, a lot of people support the veterans, and they do turn out to honor the veterans and all that, but as far as remembering personally, I felt I always wanted to do something. So it wasn't until I retired from work that I took the time to sign up for the VFW and then seek out the memorial team and join the memorial team, because I wanted to pay it forward. Someday it'll be me in the casket, and I would appreciate it if people would remember what I did in Vietnam. So I feel exactly the same way about the fellas that we bury every day.
For me, I can pretty much echo what Larry said. You have to do something in your retirement years to stay active, and I think this is just an honorable thing to do. We buried 162 veterans last year, and 30 of them happen to be World War II veterans, so we still bury a lot of World War II veterans. And I just feel that anybody who's done extraordinary things, or even just marched off and did their 4 years during peacetime, they're entitled to it. It's a way to say thank you, and it's a way to connect the families, because oftentimes, most of the time you join the military when you're young, a teenager usually, and the family, you get married, you raise a family, they don't really have much connection to your service days. They may see the pictures, or they may listen to the stories if the veterans cares to share those stories, but they don't really have a connection. So at their funeral, when they see us in uniform standing on that hill in the cemetery and that flag waving in the breeze and their loved one's flag-draped coffin, and they hear the words that we say, and the rifles fire, and the bugle sounds, and it gets real quiet, and we fold the flag and present it to the next of kin, that gives them a connection that they'll always remember. And someone so we have a lot of young people there, grandchildren, etc. Someone who may be 12 or 13, who knows how long they'll live, how long medicine will extend life. They might live another 80 or 90 years, and they will always remember perhaps grandfather's funeral and have a connection that way. So I think that it's important work that we do. And the families, I've always said, our job is to give the families a little bit of peace, a little bit of comfort, and a little bit of closure. And I think we do that.
Absolutely.
And it's very important.
So as we're nearing Memorial Day on Monday, tell us a little bit about what Memorial Day, as a veteran, what Memorial Day means to you.
Well, first of all, let me define the terms. Memorial Day and Veterans Day are too often confused or looked at as the same thing to honor veterans, and they're two distinct holidays. Veterans Day are to honor veterans or remember veterans who served, people like Larry and I who served, got out, and lived our lives. Memorial Day is to honor those who were killed while they were serving on active duty, mostly in wars. That's what, it's not just another federal holiday, it's not just having a Memorial Day picnic, although that's okay too. It's about remembering those people whose freedom, we owe our freedom to them. That we say things like that all the time, but it really means something. And what it means to me, I'll just tell a brief story. I ended up driving in rural Kentucky with a friend of mine who's also on the team, Philip Wingate. And we ended up in Fleming County, Kentucky, and in a rural middle of nowhere, and we had directions, we knew where we were going, to a cemetery, a rural cemetery, where one gentleman who raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, on the Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the Marines, was buried there. And he was raised the flag, and 2 months later, he was killed, and 1 month later actually, in March 1945 he was killed. And he was 19 years old. And Phil and I were standing at the grave of a 19-year-old. Think of all the living that we have been fortunate to do since we were 19. Someone who was 19 in 1945 could possibly even still be alive today, or certainly have died in the last 10 years. But he lay there since he was 19. And I'll just never forget that. It was a beautiful spring day, 70 degrees, light breeze, not a cloud in the sky, so blue it hurts your eyes to look at it. And then he's laid there since 1945. So that's what Memorial Day is about to me.
Larry?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I did lose some friends in Vietnam, and it was kind of weird because I knew I was going into a combat zone, and it turned out it was one of the worst places in Vietnam, but not the worst. You know, there were some big battles going on at the time in Hue and Khe Sanh, and what we were doing was relatively minor in terms of intensity of combat, but it still seemed like every time somebody got killed, it sort of felt like they were murdered. You know, it just didn't seem right. Whereas in some places, and it's always this way, you know, when some Marines are killed, a lot of times it's not one or two. A lot of times it's 30, 60, 100, just depending on where they're at and what they're doing. And, you got to wonder whether there are enough people and their families, and I'm sure that's mostly true, are there enough people to remember them and honor them for what they did? And it's, again, another reason why I like serving on this team, because we do get an opportunity we can say for sure that at least at the time of their death, these veterans received military honors, and the country did not forget them. And that's very important to me. The guys who were killed in the hundreds at Khe Sanh and Hue, God bless them. Some of them may never be recognized individually, for what they did. But if we happen to run into them when we do the burial with our memorial team, at least for that day, they will not be forgotten.
I think it's important to remember that a lot of those people, even their remains were not sent home. Some of them weren't found, of course, and some of them, they were buried in a foreign land that the families can't even visit. So the next of kin, the husband or wife, had to spend their whole life missing that person. And I think it's important on Memorial Day, before we have that picnic, and I think picnics are fine on Memorial Day, but I think before we have that picnic or after we have that picnic, to take just a few minutes to remember, and remember in your own way. Maybe you want to watch a YouTube video with your family, just a 2 or 3 minute YouTube video, Memorial Day related, or just maybe sit there and close your eyes and think about the people who sacrificed the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives. And as Larry mentioned, people sometimes died by the hundreds, by the thousands, and some of those people remains were never brought home. And it struck me as the story I just told you, the age of these people. I would like to sometime see a breakdown how many people who were killed in battle from the Revolution to today were indeed teenagers. I mean, think of that, teenagers. But I mean, the numbers would be massive. I couldn't imagine the percent. But certainly, that's you just can't imagine someone losing their life for your country at that young age, or any age, of course. But that just really means something to me.
Yeah, I mentioned I was 20 years old. My nickname was Pops in that.
Yeah.
These were
Yeah.
kids.
They were just kids. They're just kids. And when you stand at the grave of a teenager who gave their life for their country, that's what did it for me. That's what it means. That is what it will always mean to me.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you for what you do for our families, both active and retired military. And certainly we wish both of you a very happy Memorial Day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you, Chris.
We want to give our sincere thanks to Ken and Larry for sitting down with us this week. We hope you enjoyed that interview, and a lot of what they do for our veterans is so important to the families that they serve, and we are so grateful that we have the opportunity to work with the Southwest Ohio Memorial Team. So this week our prayer is that you have a safe and blessed Memorial Day, that you do take just a moment to remember those who have lost their lives while protecting our freedoms. And as always, we wish you good health, we wish you the best, and may God continue to bless you.